Welcome to the morning show, gentlemen. I'm your host, Leonard Duncan. I have Joe Tolle from ATV On Demand and Jeffrey Henson from Dirt Wheels. Hey, thanks, guys, for joining me this morning.
Hey, you got it. Glad to be here.
Joe, can you
Glad to
hear
be
us?
here. Sorry for the delay, technical problems. We've done a extensive office rearranging and everything's a mess right now. So sorry for the delay.
Hey, no problem. Jeff had some issues as well. Usually it's me, so it's okay that it's not me taking it this time, and you guys had to get yourselves ready. Um, some amazing stuff going out there. This is probably one of the biggest race weekends for all kinds of motorsports out there. But I want to talk a little bit about Sunset Ridge in the second Triple Crown, if you guys will indulge.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about Sunset Ridge yet today, Joe?
Um, I wasn't hip that it was the second round of the Triple Crown.
Yeah, not everybody gets that information, but yeah, it's second round of the Triple Crown and 14 mi 14-minute motos, whole shot matters. One of the biggest things that we took out of that I saw was an issue was Brandon Hogue. Where was he?
Yeah. I
Back of the
yeah, what
pack.
did happen? Because I didn't catch that. I didn't watch the race live. But it looks like he got back up to fifth and is in the third moto, but the first two there must have been some major issue with his machine or a get off.
Right. Just so everybody understands, I was out of town working last Sunday, so I couldn't have a show. I was in Florida working on a gentleman's machine, putting it together. So that's why there was no show. Just to be clear. But we're back, and work has changed. That's why some of the shows just can't happen when they're supposed to. Even some of the live Instagram shows, it's just the demand for other things is pulling me away. But yes, Travis Damon did go. He didn't place inside the top 10, which I wouldn't expect him to because that's not his skill set.
Yeah, I don't say major props to him for going out there and trying that, for the first time, because it's a totally different scene for him, a totally different terrain, more loamy motocross stuff. He's a West Coast uh, desert MX type guy, works terrain, which tends to be a little harder, blue groove, just a totally different thing. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I don't know if you caught the video of him versus they did kind of a version of ATV versus MX Unleashed where they pitted him against a dirt biker, and I can't remember who the dirt biker was. He was on a KTM, but they actually ran head to head on a track, and they did three motos, and the first one, Travis actually beat the dirt bike, and I think it was really impressive because he was clearing. I think he was hitting all the jumps bigger than the dirt bike was too. So he didn't win
Yeah,
the
he was
second two, but
downsiding some stuff. It looked like the dirt bike was not quite getting it.
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. What was the skill level of the dirt bike guy? And you do
Uh,
have to remember that Damon came from the motorcycle industry.
Yeah, and he still races bikes. I think he's leading or up at the top of the 125 class, in which he only runs 125 because it doesn't conflict with the pro ATV race with Works. But the I think the dirt biker was like a top amateur level pro am type racer from what I remember seeing on that video. Uh, but it was making its way around a lot of the motocross boards on Facebook and stuff. And I think I noticed a lot of comments where there was a lot of respect given to Travis, just because I think a lot of those dirt bikers had no idea that there was guys out there launching 400-pound machines over giant, step ups and big doubles and all that. He put on a really good show. And yeah, like I said, he won that first round, and he was right on the back of him the final two. And it was all done in fun, but it was cool to see that.
I think it's great, that they do something like that and that they did it. The problem is they've been doing this since the late 80s.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I remember early 90s, out at Glen Helen, they had Doug Eichner and a couple of the other guys out there practicing, and McGrath and Emig and the other guys. They were on the West Coast, and they were out practicing at Glen Helen, and the game was who could catch the guy on the quad, the fastest. And I believe McGrath was the only guy to catch and pass Eichner.
Yeah.
So great stuff. I mean, it's
it would
great
be
for
interesting
sport.
to do it today and have Hetrick, maybe go up against, one of the top guys in Supercross and see how that pans out. I would imagine the Supercross guy is going to win, but it would be interesting to see. And Hetrick's going to put on a hell of a show.
I think there's so many variables in this, it's going to be impossible to really get a truly definitive kind of thing, because there's least important maybe is how modified are the bikes, like what's the bike setup, and then you've got how good are the riders. I mean, if you have pro versus pro, well, there's different kinds of pros. There's podium pros and there's backmarker pros. But then I think almost more important than that is, what's the track like? Because if you could go back and run them on a track like, what was that track in California they used to have that was super hard pack back in the day?
Carlsbad?
Which one?
Carlsbad?
Yes.
That's
Go out on a track like Carlsbad, where that's rock hard, it doesn't get rutted. If you take the ruts away from the dirt bikes and give us flat, hard corners, I could be wrong, but my money's on the quad at that point. You get a heavily fluff track where they can wear in grooves, where the bike can get into ruts. Okay, but I think if it's hard and flat, I think the quad's got a good shot.
Well, let's pick a bike track, and then let's pick a quad track and go do two different freaking setups and see what happens. And you know what? Since it's the Blue Mafia, let's use Eli Tomac, who everybody loves, and Joel Hetrick, and go head to head twice and just say here it is. Because
Yeah,
Eli
go run.
Tomac came back and went 4-2 for a second overall, at Fox Raceway here in California. So Eli hasn't lost anything. He's fast. He's great. I'm a super fan. The older he gets, the more of a fan I am. I don't care what he rides.
Yeah,
go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, you could run at a track like, insert ATV national track, but then go run at Ashtabula. Takes the jumps out. It's a TT track. You're not going to have big jumps, but you're going to have a hard packed track without ruts.
Different kind of tires for both bikes. You can get a flat track motorcycle and they run TT, on 450s as well. So, you just don't know what it's going to be like.
It'd be fun to watch.
It would be. So, in the chat, Trey Kennard and Thomas Brown did it in 2010 on an outdoor Supercross style track. I don't know where that video is or how to find it. I guess we could look it up and check it out and go from there. But it's great that this is happening. It needs to happen a little bit more, because every time that a pro ATV guy shows the motorcycle guys how fast and how good they are, it wakes the motorcycle industry up to the talent level that's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's usually not the pros have a lot of respect for the quad pros. I think they realize that these guys are riding a machine that's nearly twice the weight of their dirt bikes and stuff. It's the C riders that talk all the trash on the dirt bike side that I've noticed, which is funny, whatever. Get over yourself. Well, who else are they going to make fun of to make themselves feel better? But then they see a guy like, Damon or Eichner or whatever go out there and just huck a triple on a quad, and they're like, oh wow, I didn't know that they could do that. So whatever. Yeah. It's all in fun, love to see it. And yeah, it's been done before, but it's really cool when they do that. Things like that. So yeah.
I do have a question, and I'm going to put it out there for the chat as well. I saw Jet Lawrence came back, okay, and then I see this video of this big apology. He's glad to be back, but he's sorry that he freaking ran his mouth. He thought he was with his friends and said some disparaging things against somebody. I don't know the whole story. I didn't see anything in print. I just saw this big apology deal. Are all of our motocross guys going to the wayside because they can't shut their mouth?
I gotta think Deegan was involved somehow.
No, Joe, was it you that told me about Deegan and the fact that he gave up his seat so that Davis could go to the hospital?
I never heard that.
Yeah, they were on a private. It was a private plane, and they made it. I guess it's the Deegans, the whole group, moved aside so that his family could take the flight so he could go get a surgery. I don't know what truth there is to it or isn't, but I seen it posted in a couple different places, and I thought I talked to you, but I must not have,
No.
about the fact that, I was told that he gave, booked the flight. He didn't book the flight. He just gave up his seat so that he could go to the doctor and get a surgery. So, I mean, it's still that it's given the guy back a little bit of credibility for running his mouth and being such a douchebag. Um, and you can't take anything away. The guy's super talented. I believe he went 1-1 yesterday, out at Fox Raceway, and won the outdoor opener for the 250 class. And I deeply apologize. The young lady that won on a Honda, I can't remember her name, but she did well as out there winning as well, and we know Lawrence won because he went 1-1 and put on a show. I didn't get to see any of it because I was trimming trees and dragging branches, and yeah, I'm not cut out for that. So anybody that does that for a living, you guys are hats off. You're working way too hard. You know, good stuff going on down out there. Plus, I was just talking to you guys before the thing started. There's racing all over the world right now. It's the biggest race weekend in motorsports. Unbelievable, everything that's going on. Later today, the Coca-Cola 600, the Indy 500, if you're a fan. We do have an ATV rider that made it from ATV racing to the Indy 500, and Corey Witherall. So ATV racers do get to touch everything.
Yeah, that's cool. How old is Corey now?
Why do you got to ask me hard questions? He's probably 50 somewhere.
Yeah, he's our age.
Yeah, he's our age. Because he was like 16 when he got to race Mickey's.
Yeah.
I get to talk to him every once in a while. He's good dude. Great perspective on ATV racing. He still loves the ATV racing so much. And I figured he'd be at every Indy, all immersed in that crowd because, dude, that's a pinnacle. And he's like, yeah, it's okay. And you're like, what? Right? No, I want to go hang out with the ATV guys. They're way more fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Come on, sit down. Let's have a good time. Joe, you're awful quiet this morning. What's going on?
I'm just waiting to jump in when it seems appropriate.
Well, let's put this out there.
Well, that's a first.
Yeah, no shit. Let's put this out there. Hey, who came up with that rendition of that Husqvarna quad that you guys posted?
Oh, up on dirt wheels? We found that came from somewhere else. It's definitely AI because you can see the tire logos are upside down. But whoever did it, good job. That would have been a great April Fool's joke for dirt wheels, also. But I love the look of it. Very clean, simple. But not going to happen, I'm sure.
You do realize that KTM could never build that.
That who?
That KTM could never build that.
Why is that?
Because
They could. Well, yeah, maybe not today. I don't know what's going on with KTM. That's a whole nother story all on its own with who's the new or not. It's not a new investor, but they actually own the majority share of KTM now out of India.
Oh, so there's a whole batch of stuff. They're probably going to take that production away from China and bring it to India then.
They were talking about that between there and I think it was Vietnam or something like that. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, there is going to be a shift in production. I don't know. It gives me a headache trying to follow all that stuff. Um,
Yeah,
so
I'm a little perplexed myself. Have you heard any more about the 300?
have I
Yeah.
the KO?
Yep.
Uh, yeah, I wrote it.
I know you wrote it, and we'll get
Yeah.
into that. But do they have more units in the States yet?
I think they're going through the whole process of getting it approved with CARB and EPA and everything. I would imagine there's gonna I can't imagine that the exhaust that is on it right now is going to remain on it because it looks like an aftermarket straight through competition exhaust. It has a very short silencer on it and a wide head pipe that just straight through, straight to the back. It's not super loud or anything like that, but it's responsive. And you know how the government works here. We'll probably see some gigantic black, full blown muffler on it by the time it gets through here. I do know that, talking to Brock, who is the one that Joe and I talk to the most over at KO, that they are listening to our suggestions. I had one major suggestion for them, on top of a couple other small things, as far as changes to that machine. But so I don't know. I'm hoping there's a few changes will be made before it gets over here. It's nothing that the aftermarket can improve on. But other than that, no, I don't know when they plan to ship them over here. I know the date they were looking for was sometime this summer to start receiving the
So
machines.
realistically, you're probably not going to see this thing till 26.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But 26 starts
This
in a
summer.
couple months.
So, yeah.
Isn't that October when they start releasing all the 26 models?
No,
It
hell
depends on,
no. They've already started.
yeah. We should be hearing, we're going to be hearing some stuff from Can-Am here any day. I'm sure about 2026 models. They're usually the first ones to jump on. And then Honda, I think, actually just announced some of its ATV lineup. I can't remember if that was the 2026 models or not, but Honda always releases like 2 or 3 ATVs, and no surprises. There's no real change there. It's all, color and colors and stuff. There's nothing new coming down from Honda. So don't waste your
What's
time looking for a 450R.
what's the point?
I I don't know. Ranchers uh love their Hondas. They don't want all of the technical stuff. They just want a machine that's going to last. So, I think that's the bulk of the people that buy those more simplistic machines. But yeah, what's the point? I don't know. You
Do
know
you
what?
think that? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I would say for us, the point is we put those posts up because we know people are going to click on it looking for a 450R. So we get some traffic out of it. But yeah, every year, I mean, it's been a decade now, and every year we put anything Honda up, it goes nuts online, and followed by disappointment.
I'm getting the sense from the people that I talk to that there's a lot of people that are pissed at Honda.
Yeah,
They'd still go out and buy a new Honda if it came out, but they're pissed because they've disbanded making parts for the 2014 TRX 450R. So you can still buy some of the stuff, but they're not making any of the parts over again.
right.
So it's
Yeah,
going to be just like the 0405, here in a couple of years, you're going to be scavenging for parts. And one of the things that's different, the rec guys, we're still working with them and still, building them and doing that. But there is nobody wanting to build a performance '06 up 450R for any kind of racing that I'm aware of other than Baja.
yeah. Well, why would you? I mean, Yamaha is the one that you got contingency prizes and stuff out there, at least at the pro ranks. And yeah, you're getting into them. I think you can find more parts, thanks to the aftermarket for the 250R than you can the 450R right now.
Oh, for
Correct me if
sure.
I'm wrong.
You can build an entire TRX 250R other than the CDI and the flywheel.
Yeah.
The problem with the CDIs is none of them work. You can buy them, but they don't work. And the
Yeah.
flywheels come apart, the aftermarket ones. So
Yeah.
at least all the stuff that I've tested. So we hunt
Yeah.
down as many stock CDIs as we can. And we've even sat down with Richard from Vortex and had long conversation about, hey, this model is still, you know, in demand, and we
Right.
believe this unit would sell. And he absolutely refused to make it.
Hmm. That's weird. I mean, because we see a whole ton of stuff at Dirt Wheels, are, with all the 250R takeovers have really taken off. And man, the attendance numbers they get with people that own 250Rs. I own a 250R that I need to get on and get it built. I think Joe has one. I'm sure you guys see plenty of them coming through the shop.
Oh, dude,
Um,
I'm just, next to Banshees and LT 500s, they're, I mean, overwhelming how many we
yeah,
have.
yeah,
I probably have anywhere from 25 to 45 calls a week asking about something for a 250R.
yeah,
Uh, you asked for the CDIs, and I mean, it was a great conversation that we had with Richard, but his answer was nobody wants to pay what it's going to cost me to develop that product again.
yeah,
It's just there's not going to, because it's going to cost up near $650, close to $700 to put that unit on your bike. And I know the 250R crowd, they spend a lot of money for certain builds, but they're not going to spend that on average for the consumer base when you see on Amazon a CDI for less than $100. Granted,
yeah,
it doesn't work, but they're still going to try to buy it.
yeah,
And then everybody's in the ballpark of, well, why does it cost so much? Why are they raping us? Well, this, that, and other thing. They don't take into consideration any of the fact that there is a development cost. There's new hardware that needs to go inside the CDI. That's why you don't see Vortex making CDIs.
yeah. It's kind of funny because that goes along the same line of getting a manufacturer, say Honda, to bring back a new updated 450R, maybe aluminum frame, EFI, and people are all like, they just will go off on how they should build them. They'll sell like crazy. I'll buy one right now. There's no reason that they can't do that, and we agree with them up to that point. And then they come back with, and it should only cost under $8,000. It's like, no, that's not gonna happen. No
It's not
way.
in
Right. That's impossible.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, they can't even make them. And I think this is where it comes because Yamaha has made that YFZ 450R continuously. What is it, 10.6 now? They won't even be able to meet that. It's going to be closer to 13, like we've said in the past. And because whoever builds one is going to have to go through all the government red tape and the certifications, and all of that costs a lot of money, and it's built into the price of those machines. So,
Yeah, and Jeff and I have talked about this. Like we went back, I don't remember what the exact percentage was, but we went back to 2009 and we looked up the price. Like what did the YFZ 450R cost in 2009? And then what did the YZ 450F cost in 2009? And I don't remember what the price difference was, but it was over $1,000 more for the quad, as it you would expect,
yeah,
because it's just more parts, more moving parts. And so, yeah, I mean, if Yamaha's updating their 450 dirt bike every year, and that thing is like still about the same price as the quad, I mean, you should expect that a new quad would be 12.5 if the
yeah,
bike's 10.5.
the only reason the quad price hasn't went up is because they're building stock because they're going to build, the 26 models, the axles, the carriers, the brake rotors, the calipers, all of that stuff's all the same. The frames are all the same. All they have to do is number them. And so if everything's the same, your overall cost drops because you're building probably 2 or 3 years worth of product ahead of time.
I don't know if
yeah,
it's I don't know if it's that because they're still building parts in Noonan, Georgia. Like I think, I don't know if they're doing it every 3 years or every 2 years, but when you build a new dirt bike or you build a new machine, number one, you've got R&D. You got to pay for that. It's done. YFZ R&D was done. YFZR R&D was probably done back in '06. It came out in '09. So that was done in 2006 at $2006. The tooling was built in 2006. It's paid for. When you tweak a frame and you come out with a new engine, you've got to come up with new tooling for that. You've got to have new jigs, and everything changes, and you've got to pay for that in modern dollars, not in 19-year-old dollars. So there's all that. Plus, a dirt bike that's a motocross bike is red stickered. You don't have to get it through EPA compliance. All that stuff of getting things through EPA, it costs big money. It's not cheap, and you got to pay for that in $2,025. So, there's at least three factors that I've named, R&D, testing, tooling, and EPA compliance. Like YFZ 450R is already in. It's probably grandfathered in now. Like Kawasaki has that, had that KLR 650 forever because it was just grandfathered in. So I think those are three big price drivers where Yamaha's able to keep that quad where they've got it because they paid for it 2 decades ago.
Yep.
Do you think with everything that's going on in the political world that the EPA is going to lighten some of the restrictions on bringing certain models in? Like you were talking about the KO having to change the exhaust. I know the requirements for an ATV are different than a motorcycle, but do you think that there's any possibility that some of that's going to lighten up a little?
I think it's already happening. From what I heard, the EPA, maybe not in power sports so far, but it is happening with diesel trucks and the automotive side. So why wouldn't it? And maybe we should all be writing the current administration to help us out with that. We've already started on trying to get new rules, state rules for tracks, the inherent risk legislation where more tracks, it'll make them easier to find insurance, and insurance will come down because there isn't as much liability on those track owners and stuff. And I'm seeing some movement there. But yeah, I think same thing, the exhaust issues and emissions issues, I think we're in a good position to see some change here. I even saw some stuff about them trying to push CARB aside with their outrageous. CARB is really the main issue with as far as the emissions goes on getting a new ATV out to us. They're much tougher than standard. Their rules go above and beyond what the EPA claims as standard.
And I don't even know how their freaking findings because everything they're trying to stop is a lie.
Yeah. Yep. It is interesting that everything that they're making us put on our vehicles and stuff, it actually to decrease CO2 output, it also brings down the miles per gallon, where a lot of people that outside of California and in counties that don't do emissions testing, they delete all that stuff and their miles per gallon goes through the roof. So it's strange. It's like who's making all the money off of this stuff that they're putting on us, because it just seems like a scam to me. And we know this.
The quality of fuel that they're putting out there that they keep telling everybody is helping us. No, it's actually hurting anything carbureted with that fuel. It's not meant to run through there. It's not formulated to run in the old school or the normal style carburetor because your fuel injection systems in your modern day car isn't made out of the same product.
Right. But you go and buy a cheap lawnmower at Home Depot, and it lasts you a year, you let it sit over the winter, and then you go out to start it again and the pilot jet's clogged up. Thing won't start. You'll be out there with a can of ether or whatever trying to get the thing to fire up because it's clogged, because it's garbage.
Yeah, it ruins the carburetor.
Yep.
And then you can't buy a new one. You have to go buy another lawnmower. Well, in
California, my old Beta dirt bike, I had a 450RR, the rubber diaphragm down in the bottom of the bowl, for the accelerator pump, just it just disintegrates because of that fuel if it sits in there for a couple of months, or just actually it just after running through and stuff, after a while it falls apart and the fuel seeps through it and it won't run at that point. You have to replace that. But yeah, carbureted vehicles,
Put
the
real
fuel
gas
we
in
got
it.
today are garbage.
Put
Huh?
real gas in it. It won't do that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I do. I put, in my YFZ, I put that I race, I'm running straight C10 VP and I know it doesn't give me any performance boost or anything. It might make it run a little bit cooler, but it's so I don't have to go through all that stuff. And even EFI is you don't have as many issues as you do with a carburetor, but I just don't want to deal with that stuff down the line, the bad fuel causing problems.
So are you running the VP 110 or C12?
I'm sorry, C12. What did I say? C10. I'm mixing them. No, no, yeah, I'm running C12. I like a little lead in my fuel too, just
It's the
to
only way. It's the only way to get real gas.
yeah,
Only way, because none of this stuff. I'm not a chemist, so I can't tell you all the differences in there. But the only way to get real gas is to run leaded fuel, and
yeah,
the only way to keep your emissions down, take all that other crap off there and run leaded gas, because the
yeah,
the, exhaust particles that are coming out of most of our exhaust are detrimental to humans.
yeah.
And this is the part they don't tell you. Oh, we're clean air, we're getting the carbon out of there. Carbon's not killing us, people. Carbon, you're made of carbon. Everything that's around you is made out of carbon. So,
Trees feed off carbon. So
yeah. So, what are you guys doing? What are you thinking? What did they teach these poor kids? I think Joe's brain's about ready to explode right now.
Oh yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm just gonna bite my tongue.
Yeah, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on. I don't think that are they going to release that two-stroke Kawasaki in 26, or is it later on?
I heard it's a year out. Well, actually, I heard it was a year out 6 months ago, and then I heard through the grapevine somebody said it might get delayed again. But yeah, it's supposed to be a 2026 model. It might be a late 2026, and that's two wheels.
Right, right. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, it's a change. It's something out there. I had a long conversation with a fabricator here on the West Coast that does UTVs and um, trucks, and he's doing some off-road frames. And he was building a hybrid chassis for a TRX 450R and a replacement chassis. And I asked him some questions about what he knew about Honda not supporting the 450R anymore. He didn't know. So I explained it to him, and I go, do you know much about Mike Walsh? And I explained to him the Gen 3 chassis with all the different, abilities to run different engines. He was blown away. Thought that was the greatest idea that anybody could come up with in the industry, because it's saving so many people money instead of having to buy a new machine every couple of years.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask this to you first, Joe. Gentleman in the chat wants to know if you think it hurt the industry going to EFI over staying with the carb model machines.
For the average guy, no. For the average guy, no, because I don't run. I still have a 2013 Raptor. It's got like 20 hours on it. I usually drain the gas and I'll run the engine till it stalls, so I'm pulling most of the gas out of the EFI. But I don't run normal ethanol pump gas. I mean, Lenny doesn't put stock in it. I'll tell you, I've used it. I've had good luck with it. I get 90 ethanol free, 90 octane fuel, and I leave it in my lawnmower all winter long. I come out next spring, I pull the cord, fires right up. It's carbureted. I haven't had any trouble with my fuel injection in my Raptor at all. And it's a 12-year-old bike now. Doesn't get ran much, but that probably makes it worse that it sets longer. I think for the average guy, EFI is a win. I think for the high-end racer guys, and maybe Lenny will dispute it, and I'd love to hear that. I think maybe when you're building a full-on race monster, it makes things more expensive, and because now it's like instead of getting your 450R with an FCR carburetor, add your favorite jets. Now it's, all right, I'm going to buy an $800 Vortex because I need it, and you need it if you're going to race at a decent level. And now you've got dual injectors on these things, and that's like what, $1,500, another $1,000. My buddy's got $10,500 in his kid's YFZ 450R engine, and a lot of that, or at least a couple grand of that, is just fuel injection parts. So I think it's made racing more expensive. I think for the average guy, fuel injection is better. I've never, if my 400EX sets for 4 or 5 months and I don't start it, I'm probably going to have to clean that carburetor. If I do the same thing with my Raptor, it's going to fire right up, no problem. So that's my take.
Well, like I explained, the fuel doesn't hurt the fuel injected machines, but it does hurt the carbureted. And the fact that you're having luck like that with pump gas, I have customers that have the same luck. And I'll tell you the same thing I tell them. Bet the farm in Vegas, because that just reality, it doesn't happen for the mass majority.
Ethanol free. This is ethanol free specific fuel.
Still chemical fuel, still not real gas.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I know, Joe, you're correct that the average recreational rider, it's definitely an advantage. But I just remember back in the 90s and 2000s when we were all running carburetors on our 2000s on our 4-strokes. Well, I do not miss showing up to a race at a different elevation. When we were racing works back in the day, it was or racing in Mexico, there was a huge variance in altitude and temperature and everything. I do not miss staying up all day and all night the night before trying to get my machine dialed in with the jetting and stuff. The EFI and then you add a vortex ignition to it. I see really no big difference in power. I think where that argument comes in, where carbureted versus EFI, there's a lot of big debate on the dirt bike side where they're talking about 2-strokes, and it seems that the carburetors on the 2-strokes are still favored over the EFI or the throttle body injected 2-strokes.
I've heard, I heard Mitch Payton say the same thing.
Yeah, a lot of the Beta, some of them offer you either a fuel injected version or a carbureted version. I think Beta is still making all carbureted 2-strokes. KTM has some fuel injected 2-strokes, and all the debates I've seen online seem to still favor carburetor, mostly for the initial off idle response, out of the gate, or just throttle response from a low RPM. They just seem to respond and come on harder with the carburetor.
I think as they perfect that, it'll get better and better. Not enough people are doing it. KTM's leading the way with it, and the guys that I've talked to with that 300, they prefer the carbureted version. They like the injected 300. It's a great bike, but it's not the same as the carbureted version. So to answer the second question this gentleman had, he wants to know, will that force the people that come out with new machines, if they came out with a new 450, would that force them to go to fuel injection?
Yes.
I think they will, no matter what. Yeah.
Yes, they will too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason for that is because ATVs have to meet a green sticker certification. There is no red sticker certification for quads.
Yeah, the rules are different.
Yeah, the rules are different. We don't play by the same rules the dirt bikes do. I don't like it. None of us like it. I blame mostly the communist government that runs the country, and I also, to some level, blame the OEMs because they haven't fought it. And why would they? Because only one of them builds a sport quad. But yeah, if you see a new sport quad coming out, you are not going to see one come out with a carburetor. I'd bet all my money on it.
The KO 300 is fuel injected, so
I just think that when you build a stock machine and you take the average and they put the systems together, it's way easier for the manufacturer. They don't have to. They build one map for it. Boom, there it goes. And you're going to ride it at 8,000 feet. You're going to ride it at sea level. and that system for that stock bike with a stock pipe will work. When you start modifying it, it is not going to work. That's one of the biggest problems that I have with the consumer industry. When you deal with certain fuel injected deals, they're buying a fuel injected Raptor 700. They throw a pipe on it and an air intake and go ride it. It runs, but it runs so bad they don't even realize they're cooking the engine
Yeah.
slowly.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it runs great. Well, obviously you
No, it
don't know
doesn't.
what runs great. You obviously don't know what runs great means, because it doesn't. Um, so those are things that you have to deal with. It's just like the LTR. People thought putting a cherry bomb on it allowed you to run a high compression piston and, run pump gas and put a cherry bomb on it and go ride it. No, that's not what it meant. It meant take the baffle out of the pipe and the airbox lid off. Don't put a better free flowing filter on it. Don't put a free flowing exhaust on it. Just take the baffle out of the back and the airbox lid. And some of the guys that were selling them would telling them, "Oh yeah, you can put this Yoshi pipe on there and put this filter kit on there, and you're good to go." Doing the exact same thing, destroying the engine slowly. So there's just the consumer doesn't get educated. In our world now, if it's on the internet, oh, the internet said I can do it. Okay, great. These guys aren't professionals; they don't know.
And
You know, so
I'm almost surprised that if they just did the pipe slip-on pipe by itself, I'd almost be surprised if that would do it. Because again, I'm not tuned like you do, Lenny, but if you put a cherry bomb on and pulled the baffle, pulled the airbox lid off, I think it was worth something like what, 5 horsepower or something like that. And then if you bought the full Yoshi exhaust on top of it, you only got like another horse or something very, very small.
well, because you didn't tune it.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
It comes lean from the factory. Okay. And then you change the curve with the cherry bomb, which is the reason why Suzuki's aren't sold anymore. And they changes
Dirty
the
math.
curve so that you can give it a little bit more fuel and you can do these minor mods. And yes, the guys that were dynoing them and putting the Yosh on, oh, it only does this. Well, if you tuned it, it'd do way better. But they don't tune it. So you're not getting apples to apples comparisons, and making it correct. I mean, that's where a lot of this stuff, where they use dynos to do comparisons for engines or exhaust or all that, they're never apples to apples testing. It's always, something's different. Well, if something's different, it's not the same. And can you take this guy's word over this guy's word? No, you can't. So you're not getting a great comparison when you do these things, and there's no governing board to line up the exhaust on the exact same dyno, the exact same temperature, the exact same tires and gearing, bike, everything, and running them with a guy that's not manipulating the dyno. So, that's just my take on it.
Cherry Bomb Suzuki was a very impressive running machine, though. We did dyno all the bikes back in 2010 when we uncorked them for our shootout. And out of all the bikes, now mind you, it was a generous dyno. I feel it was a generous dyno. But that being said, the Cherry Bomb, no baffle, no airbox lid Suzuki was the only bike other than the KTM that broke 50 horsepower. Generous dyno, but same dyno, same day. And the Suzuki was like 50 and a half. The KTM was like 51 and a half. Difference, the Suzuki was very linear, and the KTM kind of hit you could see it in the map and you could feel it on the track. It was like a mildly built TRX.
And those KTMs were quick until you started getting into building them, and then they became unreliable. And then 2 years into owning the chassis, it started to fall apart. So it was not made for the longevity of life like the Honda is. I think the LTR was incredibly built, other than some of the electrical was subpar. But every manufactured machine out there has something that's an issue. I mean, you can't, and I don't know why they don't do more testing and figure out that this or that is an issue, but Same reason why Yamaha still puts that slipper clutch in there with with the rivets that don't hold up on the back of the clutch basket, you know.
And Yamaha, I've talked to Yamaha about this, and they're very much like they don't see it as, I don't believe they see it as an issue for the average guy. I think they see this as and I don't know. I don't know where, I know what they say and I know what the internet says. And I haven't had one long enough and ridden it hard enough long enough to blow the clutch up to be able to tell anyone. But I think Yamaha kind of sees it like if you're not modifying it, if you're not riding the piss out of it, extremely hard, it's probably not an issue. I think they see it as more like a high level racer issue, and the average guy probably never has a problem with it.
The
That's
average
kind
guy
of what I've heard internally.
The average guy does have a problem with it. It just happens a little bit later down the road, so Yamaha doesn't feel it's their issue. Well, if it's happening to 80% of your machines, but it happens down the road on the recreational guys, it's still an issue. You guys just aren't fixing it because it's happening out of warranty. It's happening when it's down the road, when it's 4 or 5 years old, because the guy doesn't ride it all the time. That's wrong is wrong. And it's just it's a
Yeah, I wish they would go back. I think for them to go back, and I don't know if it's that they feel like if they go back, they're admitting they had a problem, but to me, it's like, look, the cat's out of the bag. Even if you guys at Yamaha are right, and it is just a high level racer issue, and then the average guy would never have a problem with it. Well, the cat's out of the bag. Switch it back just for the sake of it's better. I'll go buy a new one.
Well, the consumer base would be much happier because then they don't need to spend $1,000 or $1,500 on the conversion to fix it, you know?
True.
It's a heck of a lot more money if it comes apart on you. It's more than just replacing the clutch at that point. It's possibly replacing your entire motor.
Well, yeah, cases, the amount of debris that runs through it. If it doesn't break the cases, it still has to come all the way apart, be totally cleaned. And then when you're there, if you're within the 40-hour range, generally you're good. You're cleaning it, gasket seals, and putting in maybe main bearings and putting it back together. If you're 3 or 4 years in, you're putting a crank in it, some tranny gear, shift forks, and then a new clutch, and you're into it for $4,500. And it's just not fair to the consumer base.
Yeah. I'm still racing, but I'm not a high level racer at all. My race speed is some guys' trail riding speed, at this point. Heck, I'll be 60 next year, and that's why. But it was enough to spook me to change my basket to the 2010 basket. And that was all I did. There's several levels of change that you can add, but I just changed my basket over. It still has the actual slipper clutch inside the basket. It works fine for what my needs are, but I don't have those springs in the back. It has the cushions and more rivets instead. And that was the only thing I changed on mine.
I have never seen it work with the slipper. We always change the inner pressure plate, steels, fibers, and springs to put a
Yeah.
conventional clutch back in it. They
Yeah,
built that.
I figured I would change all that stuff when it starts to slip, and I need a new clutch. I'll go ahead and do it at that point.
Be careful with running synthetics because the steel's fibers don't like the synthetics, causes them to premature slip. Um, yeah, it's just they put that slipper style clutch in there to offset the bad tuning of the ECU that carb forced them into.
Yeah.
A lot of people get mad at Yamaha, and I go, you can't get mad at Yamaha. You need to get mad at the people that caused it, which is CARB and the EPA. If you keep the government out of our gas, keep the government out of our tuning, things are going to be way better.
So how, because I've heard this, but I've never heard it explained. How does having a clutch that will slip under deceleration because it's not compression braking as hard, how does that benefit you with a bad tune? Because I mean, it seems counterintuitive to me, and maybe I'm mildly retarded. It's been questioned, but
that goes without saying.
Yeah, I figured. But I figured, if you're compression braking and you're getting full compression braking, you're pushing that piston up and down full strength. You've got that, the energy coming back through the drive line, driving the engine forward. if you've got a bad tune and the engine wants to stall at low RPMs potentially, because I guess that's what they're worried about is low RPM flare outs under deceleration. Why does having less compression braking make it less likely to stall than more compression braking that keeps driving the piston harder?
So with the tuning issue, when you pull up to a stop on a stock YFCR, it dies. Okay, with the slipper clutch, it allows it to pull up and continue running because it doesn't work the same way. You're pulling the clutch in and it doesn't die. That's why they changed the clutch to stop it from dying when you were rolling up to a stop. Because you can use a slipper clutch, and if they're set up right, you don't even have to pull the clutch in. You just stop. Okay, so that's
I don't know
this is
YFZ.
Raymond's version of explaining. There's a
And I don't mind.
detailed, deeper way to talk about it, and I'm not that guy. It's just how
Okay.
I've experienced it, and you're allowing the consumer base not to have the stalling issue that it had before.
I mean, I don't know if like when you pull the clutch in, because obviously sometimes you'll feel clutches and maybe it's just new, but it's like start a bike in gear with the clutch pulled in, or start a bike in neutral. You could tell at that point you are still getting some drag from the
Still
clutch.
grabs.
So I don't know if
clutch works. There's a better way to explain it than I can explain it. I'm going to tell everybody that right off. And probably Recluse could probably, fill us in 1,000 times better than I can. But when you have that slipper in there, it offsets that idle stall and makes it better for the consumer base so they don't realize their bike's tuned so bad. Okay. That's just the layman's way that I can explain it to you. And as far as changing the clutch over, I just think that the standard conventional clutch works so much better, makes you a better rider. There's just so many better things about running a conventional clutch. There's certain situations that you want to run a slipper, but I haven't seen them in years. Like when you raced woods and it was super tight and technical where it mattered. Okay, I could see running a slipper in that environment. Nowadays, it's not like that. The tracks are wider, they're faster. You don't have the same amount of obstacles to go over. Works. There's no reason to ever run a slipper clutch because there's no obstacles out there that are really that technical. Same with your motorcycle guys. There's some stuff that Henson makes that allows the machine to drive better out of the turns, which is a super expensive upgrade. But as far as reliability, I think that the standard conventional clutch is far more reliable than any of the slipper stuff that they have in there. So that's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I would just go back to the main issue is the basket itself. And I've replaced just the basket along with the washer, the lock washer that goes on that, and had it feels the same, but I just have that insurance knowing that those springs are not going to pop out of the back and wipe out my motor. So if anybody's looking, that they talk about 3 different steps. I think I was over at B&R that you can do, but just replacing your basket for the average guy or the average amateur racer like myself, it works for me just fine. I haven't had any issues.
Yeah, I mean that's there's one man's opinion is there's another opinion, and like if I'm doing it,
Yeah.
I'm replacing. I want to get
Yeah.
all that out of there. I want it to function.
Yeah, I guess I'm making that comment for the guy that doesn't have the money to do the entire replacement at once. You can start by just replacing that basket, and then you can do the other stuff over time. Maybe once your stock clutch burns up, then at that point switch over to the older pressure plate and clutch system.
Right. And the problem with the Henson deal is if you want to switch over to that, you still got to buy a basket. So that just adds money to it. And you don't need to run a Henson inner hub and pressure plate until you've worn your stock stuff out to the point that you have to replace it. Henson doesn't want to hear that, but I mean,
Yeah.
the stock inner hub and pressure plate in the conventional deal is super durable, super tough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no reason to buy some of that stuff because you don't need to. you just don't need to. I mean, we didn't run a lot of the Henson product when we were racing all the time. The outer baskets we did, but we didn't run the inner stuff because the overall cost just was too much. Especially even for the big teams, but the recreational guys, it's okay. Any any updates of anything else that you guys are hearing about? I mean, I know you mentioned Can-Am. Do you think the Renegade's going to come out in the Gen 3 chassis, or are they going to stick to the Gen 2?
They haven't told us anything officially, but we get smiles out of them. So I'm pretty confident, and I think Joe is pretty confident that we're going to see that Gen 3 chassis in the Renegade for 2026. Knock on wood. So, yeah.
What do you think, Joe?
I think it's likely. 23 they did the Gen 3 and 500, 700. 25 they did it on the Outlander. So I mean, I think it's going to go to Renegade. I don't think they want to keep building two different chassis. I had Cody Collier and his mechanic Mike Seeger look at it, and they've got some concerns about Gen 3 going to Renegade. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the AR mounts are single shear and they're not double shear. And I'm a Can-Am fan, but we've done a lot of work on a Can-Am side-by-side build lately, and I got to tell you, like, they're just single shear AR mounts. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. And we were doing a Maverick X3 build, and we've got a whole gusset kit that bolts on the front end to tie this hole into that hole into that hole to make a double shear mount for this and give it more durability. And like, we need to stop worrying about the weight and start worrying about breaking it. So I think Gen 3 is coming, but I hope they beef it up from what they've done with Outlander. Otherwise, but hey, Rick Checo, he's probably looking forward to making more parts. So hopefully when they do it, they tweak it. Don't leave it just like it is. At least according to your reign. Well, according to your 2-time and hoping to be 3-time GNCC champion and his mechanic, they want to see some durability stuff added to it.
I got to go to that release, that you sent me to, Joe, and I kind of get the factor from the Can-Am guys that because they're a factory team, because they think they know more, that maybe they don't pay attention to the aftermarket industry enough, like most of the factory teams didn't. Yamaha was the only group that listened. Honda never listened. Honda never did the things that we told them to do. Suzuki probably didn't listen. Kawasaki definitely didn't listen. So I just don't see Can-Am with their arrogance changing it and trying to make it better. I think they think it's good enough, and their testing is at a high enough level. It's kind of like Polaris's arrogance. Oh, we build the greatest stuff ever. Yeah, then why does it all break? I mean,
and a lot of the Polaris stuff, and this isn't my opinion. These are the opinions of guys that I know, and probably a little more from the side-by-side segment. But I mean, there's some similarities between these big 4x4s and the side-by-sides. They're heavy. They're big. When you run them into something, you got mass and momentum. And I'm hearing from guys like, yeah, Polaris has their own issues, but the Polarises in general are a little easier to work on than these Can-Ams. They're complicated. The way things come apart and go together. Can-Am is still today not taking the simple, reliable approach to the way that they're designing their vehicles, and whatever.
it's all the engineers they pick and how they dissect it. The head guy is obviously not a mechanic and doesn't work on anything. He just is a design guy, and that's the biggest problem with all the manufacturers, that there's some guys out there that can design some amazing stuff, but they generally have a mechanical background or a mechanical skill set, and they understand how hard it is to work on them.
Well, and here's one example. We were just changing the oil in this Maverick X3 build, and I watched Eric. He pulled the drain plug out of the car, and I'm watching oil come out of this one hole, and I'm figuring it's the drain hole and for the skid plate for the oil. But then there's other holes around it, and all of a sudden there's oil coming out of like 5 holes, and I'm like, dude, what's going on? And he's like, oh, you got to buy a special $20 funnel to drain your oil out of these things. I ain't paying $20 for a funnel, you know? So he's just draining oil all over his skid plate that he'll turn around and try to hose off. He'll never get it off. It's just like, I wouldn't do it. I'd spend the $20 for the funnel. But why the hell do you have to? Quit making them so complicated. Just build the shit to last. Make it tough. Who cares what it weighs? When you make these things, they're very complicated to work on. And this is my opinion. This is just what, like Ed Texera's telling me, Eric's telling me, who owns the car. Like, I don't own it, and I'm glad I don't own it, because it's just too complicated. And if you don't work on it yourself, if you don't want to deal with the headache and the pain of doing it yourself, and you take it to the dealer, oh boy, well, you deal with that more complicated assembly and disassembly at $120 an hour. Go for it.
You were about ready to say something, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to say, to end on that, you brought up Yamaha, as being maybe the better of all the manufacturers and stuff. And Joe and I talk about this all the time, that their engineers are just as big as enthusiasts as we are. In fact, everybody that we deal with at Yamaha, they get out there and they race. Some of them race GNCC, they're tuners, they love the YFZ, they love the Raptor, they have their own input on those models, and it's the same guys that we were dealing with 20 years ago for the most part. So that's kind of the difference. And I can even point to a recent deal where I went to a press intro or a press ride. It was actually here in Arizona for the RMAX side by side, and Yamaha will take us out, and they'll take us out to where are some class 4 out of 5 Jeep trail rock crawling things that are pretty treacherous, and they'll point at it and they say, go ahead and try it if you dare. They don't try to talk us out of it or anything, and of course we're going to go for it. But they are not. We'll go to other rides and stuff, and the trail is just very easy and stuff. And the manufacturers are, they do that to keep things safe. They want everybody to stay at the same speed. Now, Yamaha's a little bit different, and it just shows you the amount of trust they have in the products that they build. So yeah, there is a little bit of a difference there between Yamaha and most of the other manufacturers. They are true enthusiasts.
Right. Well, in 2004-5, when they had the oil problem with the upper rod bearing on the crank, at first Yamaha was fighting, saying, "Hey, you engine builders are doing it wrong." Well, it wasn't oiling correctly, and when they came to the shop and we laid out ours, Baldwin's, Sparks, and somebody else's, and they all have the exact same failure, the Yamaha engineers went, "Oh, okay." And you see the oil upgrade kit that came out, or the change in the way that they oiled it, so that they solved that problem to make the machine more reliable. Honda would have never even showed up. They wouldn't have cared. They probably would have changed something internally later on, but they wouldn't have came to us to look at it. I don't think Kawasaki would have either.
No.
It's just differences in it. We started talking about something in the beginning, and that was Sunset Ridge and the Triple Crown. The one thing that I wanted to bring up that we never even talked about is the fact that Joel Hetrick's streak is still alive. He's still undefeated. He's heading towards 2 seasons of undefeated, which is unbelievable in the ATV world. This guy, I was texting back and forth with him this week, and I just told him, I said, "You can't be human. There's just no way." And he laughed, and it was just a joke, but the guy's incredible. His skill level, his talent, it's unbelievable.
Think he's the best ever?
Yeah.
I mean, we brought that up a few times, but yeah, how do you say he's not? The guy is pretty unbelievable.
I mean, because I bet money that you take him in any skill set that you go to on an ATV and he's going to win.
Yeah.
And he may not win cross country races at first, but you give him enough time, you give him enough races, he will.
Yeah.
And you can't take anything away from Bryson Neal. That guy's a freaking beast and an
Right.
awesome, yeah, awesome rider. You know what? I think it has something to do with the team and David Eller.
Yeah.
They have an amazing setup going there, and they keep building winners. I think their Supercross teams are getting better. Um, you're going to have to take a look at what they're doing, Team Phoenix, and duplicate it, or you know, maybe modify a couple tiny little things. But you got to look at their personnel, how they're laying it out, and your leader. He wants to win races. He wants professionalism. And as you watch this develop, they're getting better and better and better every year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to me, it's not an upgrade from Team Honda in the old days, but it's a redefinition of it, and he's taking that Yamaha ATV team to a new height and a new level that I don't think it's ever been at. So hats off to Team Phoenix and David Eller.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about that earlier, and we got sidetracked because you put the three of us together, and we can never stay on track because we're all have different thought processes and talk about ATVs in different forms and love every bit of it. And
Yeah, well, since we're talking about it, we'll throw a shout. You and I talked about this before we got started. Bo Barron back on top of the points chase with the works at, I think he's 43, 44 years old now. This will be his 12th championship with works. He's setting I mean, we didn't think that anybody could reach that, many championships with works before, but yeah, he just keeps on upping the game. Very cool.
What are your guys' thoughts? What are your guys' thoughts on? And I'm not trying to change the subject on Bo, but I mean, because Bo Barron was doing this, and now it's gone. And what are your guys' thoughts on side by sides getting the boot from works?
So I've got a little inside baseball on this. I don't know if you do as well, Jeff, but they did it to themselves. The
That's
reason the law gone
yeah.
is because they did it to themselves.
The entries were not what they were several, 5 years ago. They were getting a ton of entries. I went out there and I was out there waiting at the track, and I noticed the production pro or whatever, the big pro class that Bo Judge runs and everything. There was like 5 of them out there. That was it, you know. And I'm sure the promoters probably have to pay a lot more for insurance for those vehicles to run, because you're talking about, vehicles that weigh near 2,000 pounds on a motocross track. I can't tell you that there's increased liability, but I'm sure that the insurance companies are going to do whatever they can to make a few extra bucks.
There
And
definitely has to be increased. And I've never been to a works race, but I've seen it on TV. I've seen it on the internet. And it's like Carrie Joe and the Coombs, like, inside and for inside was like they quit doing side by sides at GNCC because they're like, these things are trophy trucks now. They're going to kill a spectator at some point. So I heard that's what did it at GNCC. Just the cars were getting so big, so fast that the Coombs were
and
finally
the
like,
insurance companies with GNCC were coming after them too because of that.
I didn't hear insurance issues. I heard that the squabbling between the protests and the fact that these little girls kept not being able to get along with each other, and
I know who you heard this from.
and they couldn't get along, so the promoter just had to say, enough's enough, you're out of here. I can't deal with this. When you're taking all of our resource time to referee your squabbles, it's not worth it. And that's just one of the aspects of it. And
Yeah.
I'm
I
never
heard the same thing. I heard the same what you just said from one of the actual side by side racers, and he said it was really bad, and not and they just made they were having to do engine tear downs constantly because everybody, it was a protest every round.
Oh, forget that.
And this racer himself said, I don't blame Works for at all for letting
Yeah,
him
that's what I
go.
heard. It's okay. Get rid of him, whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And I don't think that racing for UTVs, other than a couple places, is coming back. I mean, you're going to have to go to the desert.
yeah, exactly.
The desert, Legacy, Baja, that's where you're going to race. You're not going to
Yeah.
race just about anywhere else because I don't even know if some of the
Crandon is one, but
they still
that's a
do it.
toenail.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they still have pretty decent turnout.
yeah, and that's it. So you got one guy, one place on the east, and the desert racing on the west, which you can't sustain a solid race program for that.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work.
Yeah.
Well, they're
Sports side by
getting
side sales are down with the recreational market as it is. It's so expensive to race one of those things that you break a transmission, it's $8,000 or more to fix it every race. I think it just is become unaffordable for a lot of people too.
Well, ATV motocross is kind of the same way, a $10,000 race motor that you can race once, maybe twice. You might get three out of it, and then it's freaking $10,000.
Yeah.
How is that justifiable for, that's the reason why the hybrids and all the other classes are still good because you can bolt a CRF in there and race the whole season.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking
it's
about the amateur racers too. They're the ones that can't afford to show up and race these side by sides.
Right, right. Well, the amateurs, you do pro sport, pro am, 450A. These guys are all having to run high level machines, or they can't compete because you got
Yeah.
guys. You got three or four guys in the class that have bought them or built them.
Yeah.
You do.
it's not well, I mean, I've been of the mindset for now at least a year. It's time for production rule to go away. Production rule in ATV racing at this point is a freaking joke. Get rid of it. It serves no purpose.
Well, there's a couple different things I think they should do, but that's another question for another day. Maybe limiting compression, limiting fuel, and make them bring the horsepower down. Then take the dual injector away, make them run a single injector, make them run stock injector bodies. If you're going to stay production, make them run a stock injector body. And now that just automatically changed the cost and brought the horsepower down, brought everything down. And you know, maybe you're not going to blow up your engine every third race, or you'll be able to race a full season. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Talking, there's those guys that are building that stuff are probably going to scream and shut that guy up. We don't want our gravy train to quit. Well, Mark Baldwin's so busy he can't see straight and doesn't take a day off.
Yeah.
Maybe
Wayne can still sell plenty of shocks. He doesn't have to sell a dual injector.
right. I don't think Wayne's is super as involved in that as everybody thinks, but he is involved in it. And Wayne's
Be
a
right back.
super intelligent guy. Hey, what did you do, Jeff?
Be right back.
Wayne is a super intelligent guy. I had a great conversation with him because we're building these Lager Banshees, and we were setting up some shocks from him, and I just had a great conversation with the guy. I mean, he's just so smart.
I love to talk to Wayne.
Yeah, he's freaking great, dude. The stories, I can't wait because when the shocks are done, I'm probably going to drive up and get them just so that I can sit down and talk to him and get some of those insight from the old days to the modern day and get his take on it. Um, he's brash, maybe a little sarcastic, but dude, it's okay. So am I.
Oh no, I get along with that. Talking with Alan Knowles got me trained for dealing with Wayne, who's there's some similarities in the personality type. You gotta be a little bit thick-skinned and understand that a joke is a joke, even if you don't necessarily get the joke. But no, Wayne's a fun guy and he's super smart and he's helped me a lot with giving me knowledge and stuff through the years. He's been a great resource and a great guy to talk to. So I got nothing but respect and admiration for the guy.
I wish I would have spent more time earlier in my career having some conversations with him. Nothing against the guys that I've worked with and the guys that have taught me the things that they've taught me, but there's perspective. It's just like when you and I talk in depth about the way certain machines work or handling, there's different perspectives. And sometimes when you reach out and you listen to what somebody else has to say, you walk away with that knowledge that you can take and add to your perspective and go, okay, maybe we can modify this slightly and make it even better than it is now. There's 100 different ways to skin that cat. So let's modify it a little bit and make every ATV that we build, ride, or work with better.
Right.
That's what we're all here for, right?
Did Jeff bounce on us?
No, I'm still here.
He's back. Hey, everybody, it's Memorial Day weekend, and let's take a moment in our lives and thank our military veterans, the ones that have sacrificed all, the ones that are still here and that need our assistance, and the ones that are still out there giving it all. Thank you so much for everything that you've done or do. I come from a military family, and fortunately, my grandfathers didn't pass in their military service. They got to live out their lives, but not everybody does get to. And my military friends are still out there, giving theirs every day for us. Whether you agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. Still take a moment to say thank you for the ones that didn't make it home. So uh, that's what this weekend's all about. It's not just a barbecue, have a great time, and let's go watch some racing, like some of us think. But we are remembering these fallen heroes. So
Yeah, absolutely. I come from a military family too. And I know we got a couple of vets in the chat. I see Ian over there. Ian, thank you for your service and any of the rest of you that are there that are veterans or currently enlisted.
right on, right on.
I concur.
Excellent. Gentlemen, I want to say thank you so much for joining me. We went a little overtime, but we always do. As soon as we start talking about ATVs, it gets off the rails and we go 100 different directions. Everybody in the chat, have an amazing weekend and enjoy your Memorial Day. And thank you very much for being here. And any insights that you guys can give us, please reach out to us. You can DM any one of the three of us. We're always here to answer questions and help. Get your subscriptions to ATV On Demand, Dirt Wheels, and don't forget to share and hit the like button for ATV-TALK. It always helps us in the algorithm, and trust us, we're fighting against a lot of other things out there. We always need the help. Correct, Jeff?
That's correct. Good way to end.
Joe? All right, brother. Thank you,
Joe's
guys.
busy flexing.
Yeah, he's too busy throwing up his muscles. All right, guys. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you all later.